شاهد مزاح مزاح Still people are coming in. Actually, yeah, I did that today. Yeah. Can I put your towel?
He didn't know that he was supposed to be at the conference at this time, so I think he's still getting ready.
Okay.
He's going to come.
Okay.
But he'll find his way. I spoke to Rajan and he said that, I was in the email indicating that there's a possibility and it will be put at 10 o'clock. He said, anyways, today he's easy for him because he's not just organizing. We'll try tomorrow. I said, it's up to you. Okay. Hold me, I'll go to him. Let me know what needs to be done.
He decided to sit in the back. Who got ready to do it?
Can we all be seated, please? Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for everyone being with us here today to launch the third Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit. And thank you all for making this happen and for being part of it. Allow me to introduce the curator of Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit and the founder of Falak Consulting, Mr. Suhail Qusaywi.
All progress depends on the unreasonable person. These words were uttered by George Bernard Shaw over 100 years ago. He said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in adapting the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man, or today, of course, we would say the unreasonable person." But who did he mean? What is the unreasonable person? This is one of my favorite quotes. And in my view, the unreasonable person, or the unreasonable man, as he said it, is the change maker. A person who works actively to effect positive social change. A person who works actively to effect positive change. People like inventors, entrepreneurs, activists, politicians, scientists, revolutionaries, social entrepreneurs, even athletes, business leaders, innovators of various kinds, civil servants, oftentimes. These are the people that he meant are unreasonable people, in my view, or the change makers. And I've been studying these kinds of people probably for about 20 years. I'm fascinated by what makes successful people tick, how they think, how they work, how they operate, etc. And I've come to certain conclusions about them, and I'd like to share some of these conclusions with you about what we call unreasonable people. Oftentimes, unreasonable people are not very remarkable when we first meet them, except, well, obviously, the way they think. And one of the people actually I had the privilege of listening to a couple of years ago in a conference was Bill Gates. And I admire Bill Gates, and what I'm about to say is not disrespectful to him in any way, but he's kind of not remarkable when you meet him. He's not very charming. He's not the best speaker, right? He's pretty ordinary actually, except in the way he thinks, except what's here. And now what I love about Bill Gates is that he allowed himself to think big. He didn't ask anyone's permission. He didn't want anyone's validation. He decided to think big. In 1980, Microsoft, the company he co-founded, set a big goal, or a BHAG as we say in big business, a big, hairy, audacious goal. They said a computer on every desk in every home. In 1980, this was a revolutionary thought because they weren't as common as they are now, computers. People still use typewriters. I remember when I was in school 5 years ago, we still used typewriters. Yeah, so typewriters were popular. This was something revolutionary at the time. He set this goal with his group. We are going to make this happen. And by the year 2000, they made it happen, at least in the developed world. Unreasonable thinkers think big. They allow themselves. They don't need anyone's validation or permission. And in the process, he made himself the wealthiest man in the world. And today, he's still thinking big. He's solving billion people problems. He's trying to eradicate disease, solve problems that affect hundreds of millions of people and billions of people. Unreasonable people think big and give themselves permission to think as such. In 1902, a young Saudi prince, at the age of 26, believed he could recapture his ancient homeland or his home capital of Riyadh from his enemies. He thought he could, and he did. Not just that, in the process, he built a country. It took him 30 years, but he created what is today called the third Saudi state starts here, thinking big. In fact, today we see his grandson, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, trying to do the same, revolutionizing or re-revolutionizing Saudi Arabia in creating what many people are calling the fourth Saudi state. Think big. Unreasonable people have tremendous discipline. It's all fine and good to think big, but it's about the implementation. It's about having the discipline. And the change makers, the unreasonable people, know that you must have the discipline. One without the other does not work. And this is one of my favorite unreasonable people growing up. Some of you might remember this man. So it is said that Bruce Lee trained 6 hours a day. He did 2,000 punches a day and 500 kicks a day, and this is notwithstanding the energy he put into filmmaking. I used to own a martial arts school. I didn't do 500 kicks a day, and I don't think I did 500 kicks a week. Maybe I did 500 kicks a month, I'm not sure. There is a reason why this man revolutionized entertainment and the whole martial arts industry. Discipline. Discipline. Unreasonable people have that discipline that very, very few people have. Unreasonable people are relentless, yet infinitely patient. In 2015, my colleagues and I from the Bahrain Foundation for Dialogue had the privilege of going to South Africa. And we learned from members of the African National Congress, or the ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela, and we met with some of the change makers in South Africa, and we learned some valuable lessons. One of the lessons that we learned is that the ANC, they planned years ahead, decades ahead. They really understood patience and long-term thinking. They planned years and years and decades ahead. In fact, Nelson Mandela, as some of you probably know, he spent 27 years in prison. 27 years. During 18 years on Robben Island, one of the toughest prisons in South Africa at the time. During that time, he never gave up on his activism. He never, in prison, he would do his own way of subtle activism. Not just that, he urged his fellow prisoners. He said to them, learn Afrikaans, which is the language of the most white South Africans. He told them, learn the language. They refused. They said, why should we learn the language of the enemy? He said, in order to beat your enemy, you must understand your enemy. Learn their language, understand their culture, read their literature, read their poetry. And he convinced them, and they learned Afrikaans. To be someone like him, to be an activist, you really need to have that long-term thinking, long-term planning, and that kind of discipline that very, very few people around the world have. Unreasonable thinkers all have experienced failure and know that failure and success are two sides of the same coin. This is Lee Kuan Yew, the first Prime Minister of Singapore and considered the founding father of Singapore. When he came to office in 1958, he was convinced, he was absolutely convinced that the only way his small island nation could survive is if it merged with Malaysia. It had no natural resources, didn't have much of a defense force, and it was vulnerable. And he was very, very concerned about his people. And he knew, he believed, the only way for my country to survive if we merged what was then called Malaya. And this happened in 1963. His dream came through. They merged with Malaya, and it became Malaysia. A few other countries also came in. The S and the I, incidentally, in Malaysia is from Singapore. They merged in 1963, yet 2 years later, they separated again. And this was devastating for Lee Kuan Yew. It was his biggest failure. There was mistrust, there was politics, tension in the union, it just didn't work. And he gained an independent nation, but he was devastated. He was really distraught because he believed that the only way his country could survive is through merger. And here's what he said. He said, I'm going to read this out loud. He said, for me, it would be a moment of anguish. I mean, for me, it's a moment of anguish because all of my life, you see, all of my adult life, I have believed in merger. and the unity of the two territories. And his heart was broken. In fact, when he came on TV to talk about this, he was crying. He was saying these words while he was crying. Yet, after 1965, he turned this failure, quote unquote, into a huge success and helped transform Singapore into the modern metropolis that it is today. He helped transform, he led the transformation from what is then called a third world country to a first world country. He did it in 30 years within one generation. All unreasonable thinkers know you cannot have the success without the failure. So, I want to leave a message to everyone here, especially to the young people. My message is that you too can be a change maker. All you have to do is change the way you think. Thank you. And welcome to the 2019 Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit. It's the third year we're doing this. We're very, very excited. Falak Consulting is a values-based, purpose-driven strategy and innovation consultancy. This summit started with an idea back in 2016, and we're so delighted now that it's running for the third year straight, and we're bringing some of the most unreasonable thinkers from around the world to Bahrain for all of us to learn from them. This summit could not be made possible without the support of various organizations. And really, what I'm so proud of in this summit is that it's a true private-public partnership. It really is a group of people coming together to make it happen. It's not just Falak, it's really different organizations, different people making it happen. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge and thank those that made this event happen today. First, I'd like to thank His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa for his support. I'd like to thank him for a number of things. One, for being the patron today. Thank you, Bu Khalifa. The other thing is, he's been a supporter from day one behind the scenes. Oftentimes, I'd have to make a couple of calls before the event to make him move some things, make things happen behind the scenes. So, Bu Khalifa, thank you so much. Very much appreciated for his support. Yes, you can clap for him. I think you should. He deserves it. This event would not be possible without tamkeen. And really, I think it is underestimated how much of a difference this organization is making to this country, how much of a difference it's making to the development of Bahraini youth. It really is the change maker organization in Bahrain. And what I love about tamkeen is I love dealing with Dr. Ibrahim Janahi because he makes it easy. Every year I pitch the Unreasonable Thinking Summit to him again. I bring a small presentation on my iPad. I tell him, this is what we're doing. He said, okay, done. And I tried to convince him some more. He said, we're done. So, okay, good. What else do you need? No. He said, khalas, it's done. So the decision from opening my iPad to the decision to support the Unreasonable Thinking Summit is about maybe 34 seconds, 35 seconds. So, and he does this every year. And I think next year, maybe we can do it in 10 seconds. Yeah. Dr. Ibrahim, thank you so much. Can we give him a big clap, please? I cannot thank you enough, and thank you to your team. Everyone has been so supportive, so helpful. Really, it's such an honor, really, and thank you to everyone that has been supporting us from the team. Thank you. That was someone from tamkeen who started that clap. Also, a big appreciation and thanks to the Economic Development Board, under the Startup Bahrain banner or brand. Really, they've been really supportive in this. And what I like about Startup Bahrain, or the EDB, again, from day one. In fact, when we had this idea in 2016, I went to Khalid Ramih. Unfortunately, Khalid isn't here today. But I went to Khalid and I said to him, look, here's the idea. I had the idea. If you support it, we'll start from there, then tamkeen, then we'll go to the private sector, we'll do it. And he said, it's a wonderful idea, let's do it. So really, my huge appreciation to EDB and Startup Bahrain. And in fact, the Unreasonable Thinking Summit is the first event of Startup Bahrain Week. So there's a whole week of events. I think something 60, 70 events. I don't even, Ahmed, how many are we? Something, nobody even knows. Dozens of events happening in Bahrain for a whole week. So you can go online and find out what else is happening there. Can I have a big thanks to the EDB for all of their support. Finally, before I hand over to our first unreasonable thinker and our patron, I'd like to thank our silver sponsors. We value their partnership and them helping us. First, Peninsula Farms. Peninsula Farms, this is the second out of 3 years that they support us. Sheikh Rashid, thank you very much. My regards also to Sheikh Khalid and the whole team at Palm Capital. Thank you very much, sir. Also, yeah, go on. Banagas as well, my sincere thanks to them. Second year that they are supporting us. I know Dr. Sheikh Mohammed couldn't make it today, but I really, really appreciate their support. So can we have a round of applause for Banagas as well? Thank you. And of course, Babco, the third year. I think the other than our main sponsor, the only other player who's been sponsoring us for 3 years in a row. So many thanks to Babco, and again, to Sheikh Mohammed. Can we give them a big, big round of applause? Thank you. Again, my thanks to GPIC for their support. And GPIC was one of those when I met Dr. Abdurrahman Jawahri, from pitching to check in hand, we're talking about less than 24 hours. So big thanks to GPIC. Thank you very much. Also, Kuwait Finance House, thank you very much for your support. I believe Abdul Hakim is not here today, but my thanks to him and to the team for your support. And if you can pass him my regards, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. And yeah, go on. And finally, my thanks to Khaliji Commercial Bank. Thank you to my cousin, who's more like my brother, Sattam Al-Qsayvi. Thank you for your support. Okay, I think we're now, yes, a couple more people to thank. Mevento Creative Hub is the creative and event management company, our partners for 3 years in a row. They've been up all night putting all this together. They've been putting the stage together. They've been working on this for weeks and weeks to make this all come true. So can the volunteers working, put up your hand, make yourself known, and the Mevento team, can you put your hands up? Can we give those guys a big hand of applause for all their efforts? Thank you. They've been up all night, so I think they're buzzed on caffeine. If you see them a little bit shaky, you know why. And of course, I'd like to thank the Falak team, our Falakonians, really. We work somewhere between 9 to 10 months from Unreasonable Thinking Summit to Unreasonable Thinking Summit. We really work very hard on making this happen. Can I ask my team to stand up, please? Make yourself known. And yes, go on, stand up wherever you are. Thank you very much, guys, for your efforts. Good. So a couple of housekeeping issues before we move on. We would like to make this as punctual as possible. Now, these things are not easy. Getting 300 people in and out of a room is not the easiest thing to do, but we'll try to be punctual. Please help us in being punctual. If I ask you to be here at a certain time, please be back in the room at a certain time. There's always that one guy. When we start going in, he goes out and gets his coffee. Don't be that one guy, all right? So when we say come back, we all come back together, please. Let's try and start together on time. The hashtag is Falak UTS. UTS stands for Unreasonable Thinking Summit. This is the hashtag. Use it and use it generously, please. For all of those that didn't make it, let's make them jealous that they couldn't be here today. And finally, we have breakouts tomorrow at 11:30. The registration for the breakouts is today at lunchtime, correct? So decide at lunchtime which breakout you are going to go to. See one of the team members here and register for that. We'll have the speakers also tomorrow talk about what their breakouts will be. Where can people find out the topics of the breakout? Okay, there's registration booths. They can find out there. And you wanted me to talk about the feedback forms. Okay, so at the end of the day, guys, your thingamajigs have thank you, your badges have QR codes. You're going to use a QR code to put your feedback about this. We would love to hear your feedback about everything that's going on. So this is some of the housekeeping issues. And finally, I'd like to hand over to our patron, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa, for his opening remarks. فليتفضل. Thank you. Yes, Pierce. Hayak.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Sayyid Al-Qusaybi. That was a very inspiring speech. Well done for putting this together again and bringing us all together to try and inspire our young entrepreneurs and future business leaders, inshallah. So where do we begin? Let's talk generalities in terms of what it is to go into commerce, into business. And it is very important to be able to go to the basics. What are the basics? And the basics are human utility. Human beings need each other to get by into their daily lives, many aspects of life. And we all depend on our collective skills to satisfy that. And that's what the world is all about. So humans have developed skill sets which makes other people need them. So you're all defined by what skills you have and what you can do in the collective effort to go into human commerce. For things like food, clothing, transportation, entertainment, you name it. These are the things really that move the world, and it's human consumption that runs global economy. And if you can be a part of that with your skill set, that's how you create business. But it's very important to learn skills, to contribute, and specialization is going to be the future as opposed to just generalities. Now, this applies to all sectors. I'll talk a little bit about the oil and gas sector here in Bahrain and the opportunities. But I wanted to start with the basics of really being able to understand the core principles. If you can do that, if you can simplify, then you have arrived. And what does that mean? If you understand the full knowledge, you can actually simplify it into what the fundamentals are. Like the digital revolution was really based on the zeros and ones. Look what you can build from just plain zeros and ones. Life can be looked at like that. And if you can simplify, that's a start at really specializing into something. And for entrepreneurs, I think understanding your skill set is critical. You really need to understand the core principles. And as you apply technology and understand how it applies to human demand and consumption out there, you can actually achieve a lot. But let's go into a few examples of what ideas can do. And I think we talked about, Ms. Hale talked about the unreasonable thinkers being the disruptors, the innovators. But you need principled methodology. You need the structured world to work. In the refining industry, for example, I can't have operators thinking unreasonably. These are years and years of skill sets that are built on safety and operations. It doesn't apply to anyone. It really applies to the concept of innovation. But you will need that methodical approach of coming to work every day, following rules. That's critical for continuity. It's a bit of both. Life needs the discipline of operations, punctuality, hard work, but progress needs that unreasonable thinker. And it's just one concept. Once it's proven, the entire structured system then follows it. And that's how it's applied to real work, to real life. Some of the things we've been looking at in the oil and gas sector, for example, is Bahrain has one major oil field, and it still has 85% of the oil remaining, but it's very difficult oil. One of the layers, for example, is a very shallow layer we call the aroma. That's bitumen. It's very, very thick, immobile, and it's at room temperature, so you can't really drill and flow the oil to the surface. And it's only 200 meters below the ground. It was never really calculated into our overall reserves. We started learning that the Gulf University here based in Bahrain was looking at bacteria, which is used in oil spill remediations. And they were experimenting with using bacteria to change the physics of oil molecules. And one of the companies that approached had some biobacterial component, which they didn't tell us what it was, but it can convert heavy oil into light oil. And we tried it in laboratories, and it worked. Now, one of the things the people at Tatweer are doing right now is they're testing it. They are injecting it into the formation just to see what it does. Still an experiment, maybe a high chance of failure and a very low chance of success, but it's worthwhile. That's the way disruptive thinkers think, unreasonable thinkers think. Shale oil, as you have heard, fracking, for example, whenever people used to drill through these tight formations, they never considered them as being producible. It's only in the US when one man tested fracking, where you can crack the rock and pump water and sand, that they discovered you can actually flow oil. That was an unreasonable thinker. And then the technology itself that was applied to conventional oil moved into the unconventional. The discipline that is built in the old industry can easily be moved to the unprincipled ideas of disruptive thinkers. You need both, but it takes unreasonable thinkers to take that extra step, or else you stay with what you currently do. And then when you move from oil production, you go into refining. Refining, what you do, you take unusable crude oil and you convert it into more usable items like jet fuel that's used in airplanes, diesel and heavy machinery, gasoline, etc. The processes that do that have not really been changed for decades. There hasn't been a real revolution in terms of process technology. All it takes is a disruptor to think of something that comes and changes the way we refine products. Today, we have to spend billions of dollars to convert crude with high sulfur into a more usable diesel with low sulfur to meet environmental regulations. There has not yet been a process breakthrough that changes that, but it could happen when an unreasonable thinker decides to test it. And they often try. There have been holy grails in all of these sectors, and they try, but they often fail. But when you're an unreasonable thinker, you should also make sure that you hedge your bets. Don't throw everything into an unreasonable thought. You always have to have knowledge that most unreasonable ideas don't really work. You have to continuously try. It's always good to hedge your bets, have your job that you go to, and it's okay to experiment on the side. Once in a while, somebody who bets everything does succeed. But the chances are that most people will not succeed. You have to continue. You have to be persistent, as we heard the stories say. Like, and you also have to be a little bit reasonable sometimes, a combination of both. And if you're the lucky one, you will make it. We are trying as well to help in other sectors here in Bahrain. I'll give you a few ideas, because the oil sector is really how we in this region interface with the world. We trade because we're able to export hydrocarbon resources we have. Do we do much else? Maybe a little bit. And I think one way to start understanding this is look at your import bill. We probably in the Gulf import most everything we consume. But that tells you that we're a consuming society. We don't produce a lot of what we consume. We depend on exporting oil, exporting oil products, exporting gas, etc. Now, this makes it very susceptible to the volatility of oil prices. If I was an unreasonable thinker, I would start looking at the import bill. These are things that are published. You can go into the statistics of trade, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., and look at what's being imported. And then decide, can we do any of this we import in country? And if you can, that's an unreasonable thinker for the status quo. One of the companies here, Peninsula Farms, I know Sheikh Rashid works very hard on it. That was an unreasonable thought. And I probably was a small part of that unreasonable thought. And I remember when Sheikh Rashid came to me in his first or second year of operation, he said, this is it, we can't work. This is not going to make money, this is a lost cause. But, on the contrary, if you remember your business studies in the US, they taught you a concept of the barriers of trade. You have just learned what not to do. And this third year, he broke even, and now he's making a profit. And he's doing things like producing soap from unused goat milk that turned out to have dermatological superpowers of curing eczema. That's an unreasonable thought. What else can we do in Bahrain? Water was a main part of this island's past. This is why you had a higher population than usual, because freshwater springs came out of everywhere. Little has been done in desalination. We do not have desalination technology, and yet the Gulf countries are probably the largest consumers of desalination technology in the world. We don't produce any of the membranes here. But we do have formations in deeper grounds that are less saline than seawater. This is ancient water that's buried in layers that we pass through as we go towards the oil or the gas resources we drill. Can we have a bottling factory from those zones? Answer is you probably could. But you need to develop that knowledge. We probably have it. We have the electricity and water authority here in Bahrain. Can we do more to be more secure in our water resources? I think yes. That's another factor. So food, peninsula farms, water perhaps in the future. How about construction? What do we do today? We depend on foreign labor, high labor-intensive construction techniques, and there hasn't really been innovation in it. We're actually trying to do something at Babco as an experiment to see if we can bring young Bahrainis to build their own houses. That's an unreasonable thought. But if it works, you're changing the dynamics of, you cannot depend on the luxury of subsidies and reliance on others. We need to start going back to the old days. Our forefathers didn't have it as easy as we did. And the world goes through cycles. You have to be ready. Are we ready for a crash in oil prices again, like what happened in 2015? This would be devastating to our economies because that's the only commodity we depend on. To import everything, what we wear, what we eat, what we drink, for our transportation. So we have very little utility built in country, and that has to change. This is where you have to be unreasonable. Examples like Peninsula Farms is a good one. If we can do something about construction, you don't need to import a lot of labor from abroad. You can probably build your own houses. Because you import them using what? Using excess dollars you generate by exporting crude oil. Now what happens if you don't have a lot of crude oil, all the prices crash. Your ability to transact with the rest of the world gets limited. Today, we are a single commodity economy. And diversification is not yet achieved. It has to be achieved by a replacement of imports, at least partially. That's where I would start if I was an unreasonable thinker. And look at human utility. What do people need? Housing, they need health care, they need food, they need transportation, all of that. Material science, very important. As we unlock our resources, I didn't talk to you about the Khalij Bahrain, the tight oil resource we've been experimenting with, which itself was an unreasonable thought. It started off with the exploration well by a US company in 2009, where they did not find the oil in the zone they wanted. And the site geologist, the young Bahraini, wanted them to drill deeper. But they wouldn't do that because it was not in their program. So he sent them an email, which was illegal, and he did not have the authority. But now that things have gone the right way, it's okay to talk about it. He sent an email saying that the government is going to pay for that extra few feet of drilling. And they reacted by saying, no, it's okay, we'll take care of it. They drilled and they hit the formation that we know now as the Tuweg and the Hanifa formation that contains tight oil resources. But it was that one event, an unreasonable thinker, taking the risk, doing something illegal. Now, don't use that as an example, it might get you into trouble sometimes. But for this one situation, it actually worked. We now know that there is a large resource underneath Bahrain territorial areas, which we claim we're trying to exploit for the future generations. It's going to give you light ends, light gases that could help with petrochemicals and push through the concept of downstream. Now we have a refinery that's being expanded. That refinery could go into basic petrochemicals, and understanding of material science is an important part of industry. We have Dr. Sam Rajishi here. I think he's a very good example of doing that. He managed to set up a factory here in Bahrain, and he exports to the world, to Europe, manufactures parts for trains and subway vehicles, etc. I don't know what they call them, but that's an example that has to be looked at and copied. Material science, critical part. Happy to help, I think, with tamkeen. We want to push for downstream, and technology is making it easier. If you understand material science, you can easily buy machines that do this for you, automatically, 3D printers. These things are coming into fashion. If you're a first mover, and that's what we want to make Bahrain do. We want to replace imports, and we want to start exporting more. Those two things can get you a long way, and this is what our resources like tamkeen, the National Oil and Gas Authority, and all our companies are prepared to help with the financing sector to see more of industry, more of import substitution, and that's how you can be an unreasonable thinker. But always remember that you need other people. An unreasonable thinker by himself does not work. You need the structured economy to come with you. These are all the organizations that are here to support. That unreasonable thought only lasts a very short time until you prove that concept. Once it's proven, you have to introduce structure to it. You have to think of all the aspects of commerce, not just the manufacturing part, but you need to sell it, you need to finance it, you need to make sure you profit at the end. A lot of hard work. Be persistent, you will fail many times. So don't throw all your bets into one idea. You have to be reasonable. Leave a little bit for failure, because failure is going to happen more often than success. And always remember that you have to pray. Your spiritual part is important to all of this. We all believe it's God's will what happens to us, and always ask for guidance, not to get that. We are here as humans for a short time, and if you can do anything to benefit others, that's probably the best thing you can do. Leave more behind than you take away. I hope I didn't confuse you with, it was an unstructured talk. I did talk to Sahel yesterday, and he answered back later. The first thing he said is, please don't tell me you're cancelling. No, I'm not cancelling. I'm just asking you, what is this summit all about? And he answered me with something, but I still didn't understand it. I probably understand it a bit more now. Be an unreasonable thinker, not too unreasonable. Remember the basics. Something of the sorts like Churchill. Churchill wrote a 30-page letter, and at the end he said, sorry, I wrote 30 pages, I didn't have time to write one. If you have the knowledge, then you can go back to basics, and you can simplify. And that's what you build the foundation of an idea on. You need to make sure you have a specialty, a skill set, and develop that skill set. And then understand that people depend on each other for things to work. You cannot do this alone. And an idea is only powerful when its time has come. And nothing will happen at the time you want. This is why you have to be persistent. You have to give it time. If God wills it, it will happen at the time God decides, and not at the time you decide. You also have to understand when to quit. Not everything is going to be successful. So persistence, reasonable thought, unreasonable thought makes this life exciting, challenging. Wish you all the best, and inshallah in a few years we can look at some of the success stories and talk about them some more. And Mr. Sabi, thank you very much for your support and your passion. And we wish you all the best in Falak and all the initiatives you do. And thank you to all the sponsors. Assalamu alaikum.
We'll give thanks to the sponsors. Can we have our trophies for the sponsors, please? I want them to hear. Tamkeen first, can we have the trophy? Yeah. دكتور تفضل دكتور إبراهيم حياك الله. شكرا. The EDB? Anyone who's representing the EDB here today? We don't know who's representing the EDB. We'll put this on the side for now. Babco? Shall we give it to you, or do you want to give it to one of your colleagues? I guess I'll Who's next? Banagas? Who do we have from Banagas? ما شاء الله. شيخ راشد حياك Peninsula Farms. مشكور الله يسعدك. جزاك الله شكرا. What the Sheikh is talking about in terms of Peninsula Farms, for those that don't know, it's literally it's a farm in the desert where you have different fruits and vegetables being what's the word? They put it in hydroponic water facilities. Very, very high-tech stuff. If you get the chance to visit Peninsula Farms, very exciting stuff that they're doing. And Kuwait Finance House, TFH. اشكريني ما قصرت تسلم طالبك. شكرا ما قصرت. And Khaliji Commercial Bank. وجود حياة. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. We have an award. I'm going to read it out. GPIC? No one is here? Okay, so we have one for GPIC. You'll take it. طيب. Okay, شهد؟ شلون بعد تقولي ما حد؟ مسامح الله اعذرني مو براقده. تسلم طلعك. I'd like to read out the next section here. لا خليك. We have an award, I want you to give it. We started this last year giving out what we call the Unreasonable Thinker Award. And this year we are honored to give this award to a very, very special and remarkable person that came all the way from Uganda. I'm going to read his bio here, and then we're going to, His Excellency will give him the award. Mr. Victor Ochen is the founder and executive director for African Youth Initiative Network. Born in northern Uganda, he spent 21 years of his childhood as a refugee in the camps where he survived on 1 meal a day for over 7 years. He grew up amidst violence, conflicts that displaced over 3 million people, where 60,000 plus children were abducted and forcefully recruited as child soldiers, including his own brother. He grew up to become a lead example on tolerance and non-violence activism, and now is creatively working to address the root cause of conflict in Africa. His organization has so far provided reconstructive medical repair to over 21,000 war victims of rape, mutilation, gunshots, etc. Forbes magazine named Ochin as one of the 10 most powerful men in Africa in 2015. He's also the first Ugandan and the youngest ever African nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2015. We are honored to present the Unreasonable Thinker Award to Victor Ochin. Can you come to the stage, please, sir? Thank you, sir. Well deserved. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Give it to His Excellency, if you can present it to him.
Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Victor will be speaking later in the afternoon, so make sure you come and listen to his story. Some really, really remarkable stories that will be coming from him. Shad, I think we're done. We'll have the first speaker, yes. Thank you. Done, yeah. So it is now time for our next unreasonable person or thinker, all the way from South Africa. John Sinai is a trend specialist, speaker, and business innovation strategist with 20 years of experience. He consults, hosts workshops, and drives strategy sessions that inspire, call for action, and help shift gears. John speaks about the future so that leaders and companies can ask the right questions about how to innovate and be forever profitable. A published author, his first book, What's Your Moonshot?, is about what it takes to thrive rather than merely survive in our exponentially changing times. He is the CEO of AirBRN, a gamified online platform that rewards staff to learn, play, and participate. Please welcome John to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. I was recently listening to an interview with Jack Ma, the chairman of one of the largest organizations in the world, Alibaba. And he said something that really struck a chord with me. He said, there are no experts of tomorrow, there are only experts of yesterday. Now, as a futurist, as a Singularity faculty member, I got a little bit disturbed by this comment, but then when I thought about it, it really started to make sense, because all of us are so fixated with technology and how technology will be changing the future for us. But I think most of us are missing the real disruption that's happening. The real innovation that's happening around the world is not about technology, but about culture. I think the future is not so much about technology, but much more about anthropology, the study of human beings. And how are we coping with how this future is changing? How is our culture shifting in order to prepare for this future that we know is so very different to where we come from? And in order for us to start this, I wanted to take us back to a little island called Sicily. And in order for us to prepare our perspective, I want to share just a couple stories about this little island. You see, this little island in Sicily is really small. It only has around 2,000 people living in it. And for these 2,000 people living in this little village, there are 15 churches. That's about 100 or so people per church. And in today's world, if you go into the Western world, like Europe and the States and Canada and these parts of the world, where most of the innovation is starting to happen, we don't have these sort of structures. In fact, the people in this little village really understood what their lives were about. You see, the people in this village knew who they were, how they fitted in to the society. They also understood what they believed in, because the churches determined what they needed to believe in. They also understood exactly how to deal with suffering, because religion in their world told them how to deal with suffering. And ultimately, each and every one of them really was driven by the rules and duties of their society. Still, in parts of the world, like here in the Middle East, this is very much the case, where society and religion has given us an incredible level of certainty of the world that we are moving into. A level of clarity of how we fit into the society we live in. But with this clarity and certainty comes very little freedom. And freedom is required to be disruptive. Freedom is required to be innovative and to push the article of innovation forward. And what's happened in society today is that the world that we are living in has swapped all these rules for choices. So many different choices that we have available to us now has started to shift the culture we actually live in. In this modern, hyper-connected world that we live in, we have traded certainty and security with the option of now diving deep into who we are as human beings. This freedom that we are starting to feel is brand new. This is the real disruption that we're starting to see around the world. And this new concept has an actual trend that's attached to it. And this trend is called the burden of choice with zero certainty. This is the core of disruption that we are starting to see around the world today. The cultural shift that we have around us is starting to change the world as we know it. And in this world of massive choice with zero certainty, we have so many different decisions to make. I mean, first of all, do I need to wake up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock? Do I need to sleep for 7 hours or 8 hours? Do I need to eat a vegetarian diet, a meat diet? Do I have to go through intermittent fasting? There are so many different options for us to do this. What work do I need to do? Do I need to work, or can I travel around the world because now I can be a digital nomad and work from Bali and service somebody in Toronto? Do I need to get married? Do I need to run away so I don't have to get married? Do I have to get married to this sort of person or that sort of person? Do I have to have kids? Do I need kids? Do I actually want kids? They make a lot of noise, but I do love them. And ultimately, where do I want to live? In today's world, we have this freedom of choice to actually live anywhere we want to. We can hop on a plane and get to anywhere we want to. Remember, this is brand new. Our parents never had all these options and choices. Their lives were determined by the society and religion they lived in. Today, it's very, very different. And so in today's world, we've swapped security for choice. And in doing so, we've unlocked a state of perpetual anxiety because we're trying to make informed decisions about a tomorrow that's near impossible to predict. This is a quote from my new book, because I'm seeing this as I travel around the world, this constant state of anxiety, this constant state of worry about what's coming because it looks so very different to where we come from. And in this new world that we're moving into, what becomes paramount is sight. And I don't mean our physical sight or just the insight that we need about the world, but how do we develop foresight? How do we develop this idea that gets us to move in the right direction of what the world requires from us? And this foresight is what I want to focus on today. Because you see, innovation and disruption often happens to us. But how we beat innovation and disruption is by developing foresight. And I'm going to break down what I feel foresight should be and the practice, the rituals and habits we need to pick up in order to develop this foresight and thrive in the future we're moving into. And there's 4 types of sights. The first one is called hindsight. And there's this idea or concept that if we just repeat what we did in the past, we should have some form of success. And the question you want to ask yourself is, are you living a life based on a set of memories of your past, or are you living a life based on the vision of your future? If you get together with your friends and complain that it's not like it used to be, you're stuck in the past. If you get together and hope that the old times will come back, you're stuck in the past. You're not actually in love with your future. You're more in love with your past. And that's a dangerous place to be. And when you take on this idea, a familiar past creates a predictable future. And this becomes the default button for anybody that's suffering from hindsight. They start living from their memories rather than focusing on the future. And these are the people that complain about things that are happening around them because what they're expecting is for the past to be repeated. And these are the people that complain that clowns are acting like clowns, but actually what they should be doing is asking themselves why they keep going to the same circus to keep seeing these clowns. And these same people that are constantly complaining about the past are the ones that suffer the most. Dalai Lama said it best. He said, when you think everything is someone else's fault, you seem to suffer a lot. But that's just one sight, hindsight. And some of us tap into parts of our lives to be in hindsight, and other times we move into plain sight. And what plain sight is, are for people that only believe what their senses reveal to them. If I can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, or hear it, I believe it. If I can't, I don't believe that. It becomes a ridiculous notion to believe that anything apart from what we can see, touch, taste, and feel is a reality. And these people here always believe that what they see is the truth. But what we're starting to develop with quantum science and the study of quantum science is we're starting to realize that actually it's not seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. The world is not happening to us, but through us. We project onto this reality around us and then choose to look for the positives or the negatives. This is a total personal choice. As the saying goes, your personality creates your personal reality. And so people who are stuck in plain sight don't realize that their identity is how they show up in the world. Have you decided what your identity is? Have you decided what value you're giving to the world and how you expect it to be received? People in plain sight think that the world owes them a favor, not that they need to create their identity to become the disruptor. Also, the people in this space don't realize that the story they tell about themselves determines their energy levels. I had an ex-girlfriend many, many years ago, and she was from a school in South Africa called King David. And the girls from King David speak like this, with a nasally voice. And I used to say to Gina, how are you today? And she would say, I'm tired. What are you tired from? I'm just tired. And this determined how much energy she had. Does anybody here know somebody that's always sick? Always sick. Always needs medication, always got a back problems, always hobbling along. Nothing's really wrong. That becomes the story we tell the world that determines our energy levels. And ultimately, people that are stuck in plain sight don't realize that they have a very clear option of what they can choose that pushes their energy. Are you using power or force? Are you elegant in your space, or are you a bully in the way that you go forward? These are the people that are stuck in plain sight. But we also have a huge issue right now, is that people in this space don't see the world as they are. They think the world's happening to them. But then we also have a lot of incredible smart people out there. I call them people that are in insight. And people that are in insights are the people that are academically incredibly rich. These are the people that have got degrees upon degrees and doctorates upon doctorates, and I think it's excellent that people like this have done this. But these are the people that also don't realize that all that academic knowledge doesn't help you change behavior. And these are the people that are actually suffering from an incredible amount of pain, because this pain is derived from the fact, well, if I've got 3 degrees, a master and a doctor, why am I not fluid in the way I move into the world? And the question you need to be asking when you're in insight is this pain from change or my inability to change? And ultimately what we want to be doing is moving ourselves into a space of foresight. You see, the concept of perspective, of how we see this future, determines our energy levels. It determines whether we are optimists or pessimists. It determines whether we are ready to experiment or not. And in the space of foresight, there are 2 key characteristics that we need to cultivate and awaken. They are wisdom. Whoa, come back. Sorry. They are wisdom and curiosity. You see, wisdom is about how much fluidity we have in our lives. Wisdom is about having memories with no trigger points. We have forgiven everything that's happened behind us. And curiosity allows us to move towards what shines brightest for us, move towards what energizes us, move towards what excites us. And in this space of not having memories that are holding us back and moving towards what energizes us, you become dangerously disruptive. And wisdom is best described by Alan Watts. He says, the knowledgeable man has to learn something new every day, but the wise man has to unlearn something new every day. And so as we start moving into this future, the more you're dragging with you from the past, the less prepared you are actually for this future. And curiosity, let me tell you, curiosity is the anti-disruption serum, something that's not spoken of enough. But Walt Disney said it best when he said, we keep moving forward, opening new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Now, when you combine wisdom and curiosity, you start developing intuition. And it's this intuition that gets us to start seeing patterns in the world, patterns that lead us into the future, that gets us to be one step ahead of our consumers' needs and many steps ahead of our competitors' needs. Because competitors are doing market analyses, customer behavior group questioning, and all of these things just get you to stay in doing what you're doing just a little bit better, but not disruptive in no way at all. And what really starts to happen then is we get into a state of flow. We know that sports stars are really big into getting to a state of flow because it gets them to be precise in what they're doing. But in the world of business, where the rules are changing and our fitness is all about the future, the state of flow becomes imperative. And it's this exact state of flow that gives us the opportunity to be adaptable and flexible, experimental and trying new things as we start moving into this future. And as we move into this future, we need this optimism. Something that I love so much about Falak Consulting is the optimism you guys have around what you want to be doing in this future. Something that I am totally militant about, is about being optimistic. And it's this optimism that gets us to be excited about the future we're moving into, rather than being scared and stagnant about it. And so what stops us from being optimists? What stops us from getting into the flow state? You see, our brains do. Our brains are actually not designed to keep us happy. They're designed to keep us safe. That's the reptilian brain that's continuously looking for danger, continuously looking to see who's going to attack us. And now we're applying the same state of anxiety to a world we can't predict. If we're moving into the future with anxiety, you as well as being disrupted already. You see, when you are in the state of reptilian brain, your brain is in a natural state of paranoia. In the state of paranoia, you can't sleep well, your foot's tapping up and down, you're always worried that somebody's going to do a bad deal with you. But when you start to realize that there is this option of flow, there is this option of optimism, you start suffering from something new, something I call reverse paranoia. Anybody know what reverse paranoia is? Is when you think the whole world is there doing you a favor, giving you the opportunities, showing you the shortcuts to what's available. Rumi actually said it best, one of my favorite poets, live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. And before we talk about the future, do you understand that perspective about it is much more important than actually what the future is about? And it's in this space when we get this decision to become optimists about the future, we move into a life with today in mind, tomorrow in preparation, and with huge excitement for the day after. And in order for us to get ready for this future, we must become clear that what it means to be excellent has changed. It used to be about accurate repetition, but today excellence equals accurate adaptation. And it's in this space of adaptation that I want to speak about the future. And in order for us to get ready for this future, let's all make sure we're excited about it first. And so as we move into this future, I call this part of the talk, Welcome to the End of the Beginning. You see, we've spent the first 20 years of the internet building infrastructure, connecting the world, and so far we've done incredibly well. We have connected 4 billion people, and over the next 7 to 8 years, we'll start to connect the rest of humanity. And by the time 2022, 2024 comes around, every single person on earth will be connected to the internet. And the first 20 years of the internet were totally dominated by social and search. Google and Facebook and Instagram, all of these companies are all about social and search. How do we connect new ways with other human beings? How do we find more information? But information and social is about to become history. It's about to become something that we used to focus on the internet. And where we're moving towards has got 4 new pillars. The new internet is about to be born in certain parts of the world. It's already been born. And this new internet is going to be totally focused on infotech, machine learning, blockchain, and biotech. But let me start off with infotech. You see, information is now becoming the new oil, as you've heard that comment before, and how we are going about gathering information is exponentially starting to rise. You know, we've all got a wearable, you've all got a watch that measures how far you run. Soon that wearable will be an edible, which means you'll be able to put it into your stomach, and I'm going to show you exactly what's going to happen. Soon we're going to have hearables, seeables, nearables. IoT is going to be everywhere around us, creating a seamless, intelligent world that we're moving towards. Add to this Internet Protocol 6 being launched, giving us the opportunity to connect 78 octillion devices to the internet. That's 78 billion things can have their own IP addresses when it comes to the internet. And add to this even further, 5G is around the corner, giving us ubiquitous connectivity, making autonomous vehicles and flying planes a total reality over the next 5 years or so. With all this information that we are gathering, our poor human brains just does not have the capacity to understand it. And this is where artificial intelligence comes in and machine learning, giving us the opportunity to categorize and contextualize all this information to give us a seamless, abundant, incredible life that we're moving towards. This machine learning is going to hyper-personalize what we eat, who we marry, where we travel to, what we study, how we go about training, moving our bodies, and make us incredibly superhuman. But by far, I think the most exciting thing that's starting to happen, we are starting to change the very understanding of how life is created. Biotech, for me, becomes the most interesting part of the future. And we are moving away from this concept that we are having to fix things. Instead of having to fix humans, we're going to have to start creating humans that never need fixing. And it's this idea that we're moving from medtech to biotech that for me is going to change the world we live in more than anything we've ever realized. Already we're starting to have designer babies being born in China. Bionic eyes and bionic hearing will soon become a thing. And hopefully I can become a lot taller, especially with biotech starting to come around. I know from there I look really tall. But really what excites me most is with biotech, you can get a peach to taste like a watermelon and have 125 grams of protein in it. This is mind-blowing to the very essence of life as we understand it. And then the next question is, but what about trust? Everybody's going to be biohacking us, and we're going to be in trouble because there's people out there that want to break the systems and the internet, but this is where blockchain starts to come in. And I'm sure you've watched many talks on blockchain, and I'm not going to go through the whole process of telling you a ledger with no middlemen, but the way I want to describe blockchain to you that could maybe help you understand it a bit better, and it sure did me, was this. Is that, do you remember when the first cell phone came out 20 odd years ago? And this cell phone that came out was nothing like our PC. Our PC at home was big, shiny, had so much power, a huge screen. The cell phone had a small screen, no memory, no battery. It was useless initially, you remember? But it had 2 features that were incredible. It had a camera and it had GPS coordinates. Plus it was mobile, obviously. With that, what we were able to do was start to determine new platforms like Instagram, like Uber, like Lyft. All these new platforms started to build because of these unique factors that the cell phone had. And now today, most of us are on cell phones, not even on PCs. This is what blockchain's like. Blockchain is brand new. We don't quite understand it yet. It's really a little bit up in the air. It's very theoretical, but it has one key feature: trust. We're able now to determine the contracts we have because of blockchain and create a seamless process with both micro contracts and macro contracts. Let me give you a quick example of blockchain. I was in San Francisco a couple months ago, and we met the car of the future. The car of the future arrived to pick me up and said, "Hello, John." I said, "Hello, car." So where are you going? I said, "I'm going to the airport." "No problem, please get in." And because of blockchain, artificial intelligence, networks, and sensors, I was able to transfer $20 into the car's account with a micro contract No contract signed, but the micro contract of blockchain and cryptocurrency was able to do that for me. And on our way to the airport, I realized I was running a bit late. So I said, hey, car, I'm running a bit late. Can you please speed it up? And the car said, no problem, just give me another $10. I said, no problem. I gave another $10 into the car. And that car then started speaking to every other car on the road, giving it each $1 to get out the way so we could get to the airport sooner. Micro contracts are now starting to become an absolute reality because of blockchain. And the future we're moving into is creating an incredibly intelligent world around us. And this intelligence is creating an incredible level of personalization. This level of personalization is moving into an incredible level of efficiency, where things happen around us at almost a fraction of the price. Things are becoming cheaper and cheaper. If anybody here has read any of the work from Jeremy Rifkin, you'll see that the third industrial revolution, which is a prequel to the fourth industrial revolution, is starting to make the three pillars of economy almost free. Communication, transportation, and energy are moving towards becoming really free. So we're starting to see the world around us shift because of this. And things on the internet that never used to work are starting to work now. I mean, look, you weren't allowed or supposed to buy fashion on the internet. You weren't supposed to buy glasses on the internet. You weren't definitely supposed to buy makeup on the internet. But look how they've changed clothing and how you can become so very clear on the sizing based on the internet. Watch this quick video.
Your smartphone is ready. Begin measurement. Keep going. You're almost done. Measurement complete.
Hyper-personalized clothing in the comfort of your home sent to you. This is just the beginning of the hyper-personalization we're starting to see around us. And I'm going to show you a couple more as we start moving forward. Another one that I find fascinating is this brand right here called Warby Parker. And Sohail's got a pair of them right now. He's got them on. This is a frame shop that has changed the way we buy frames. They send you 5 frames for free to test. And whether you like them or not, you can send them all back for free, or you can take the ones that you like and keep them. And every time any of your lenses are scratched, they replace them. And only for $99 or $95, it seems ridiculous. Just look at makeup. If you just look at what's happening with Sephora and how they're going about selling makeup, check this quick video out. Whoa. I can't think of a quicker way to spend money as this lady starts showing us now. So we're starting to see that pretty much all businesses have to stop focusing on efficiency, and which is really what we've been doing for business from the beginning of business starting, is how do we make it more efficient and more profitable? Let's put a new IT system in, let's train our people more to make it more efficient and more profitable. But that is kind of yesterday's business. What we need to be as businesses moving forward is we need to become intelligent tastemakers or hyper-personalized suggestors. Brands will start getting to know us better than we'll ever know ourselves, because they'll be watching every move based on all the IoT sort of beacons that'll be measuring our behavior and the way we act, what we buy, what we eat, and where we move to. Netflix right now is leading the way. Netflix is now designing a new algorithm that will get you to get one suggestion based on you, based on what it knows about you to watch on TV. Not 5 suggestions, but one suggestion. And they're leading the way in this algorithm. Amazon now is starting to send you 2 boxes to your house every week. One box with what they think you'll buy based on the algorithms, and one box to send anything back that you don't like. This is actually cheaper for them to do than it is to market and to do any sort of sales. And this one here, I love the most. It's called a bracelet called Feel. It's for a husband and wife. And so what happens throughout the day as a husband or a wife, you get to understand the moods that your spouse is having at work. Is she feeling joyful, distressed, or is he feeling content? So by the time he or she gets home, you know exactly how to prepare. I love this one. Spotify, my favorite app, last year I listened to 1,300 new songs I have never heard before in my life. Why? The algorithm understood my taste so well, it made suggestions that were so good, I have never heard more music in my life. And this tablet here, for me, is what's leading the way. Remember earlier I told you about edibles? We're going from here, wearables to edibles. This is a tablet that British Airways has got a patent pending. Every time you get onto a British Airways flight, you'll take this tablet. This tablet then will speak to the air hostesses and air stewards, telling them whether you are dehydrated, you're hungry, you're tired, or angry, and they can determine how they need to deal with you based on this edible. Maybe a good one for your husband or wife as well. And artificial intelligence now is getting smarter and smarter and smarter. You see, artificial intelligence and machine learning learns exactly like we do, bit by bit every day. But the fact is that we interact with 40 or 50 people a day maximum. Artificial intelligence like Siri is interacting with millions of people a minute. So every minute it's learning more and more and more and more. And let me give you an example. This is Siri. If I had to tell Siri 5 years ago, Siri, I want to jump off a bridge and kill myself, Siri would say, your closest bridges are 3 kilometers away for you to go and kill yourself. Or if I had to say, Siri, remind me to kill myself on Monday morning because I'm sick and tired of life, yes, sure, it's in your calendar for Monday morning at 9 o'clock to kill yourself. Today, you tell Siri that you want to kill yourself, she says, it sounds like you're in a little bit of trouble. Can we call the suicide hotline for you? And we're starting to see that all sorts of artificial intelligence is getting smarter and smarter. Alexa, Siri, Google Now, and Cortana are all these artificial intelligence platforms that are getting smarter and smarter. And Siri now knows exactly who they are. Look at this one. If you had to tell Siri, hey, Cortana, tell me the movie times. Who's Cortana? Oh, I mean, sorry, Siri, tell me the movie times. Why don't you ask Cortana? And this is just the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. In order for us to prepare, we need to be flexible and adaptable. We need to be wise and curious. Because every single business is being disrupted, even businesses that never thought they'd be disrupted, like diamonds. I do a lot of work with De Beers, and let me tell you, they are really worried about these diamonds that are created in factories that nobody can tell the difference. The only difference is your bank account. That's the only difference that you have. And obviously, you can't disrupt gold, or can you? Because now gold is the next thing that's being disrupted, and let me show you how. When I did the research on this, it absolutely blew my mind. You see, 33% of all the gold and silver mined around the world is for electronics. And if you had to really get down to understanding how much electronics there are, and the major city in the world that takes all the waste of electronics, check this little video out. It says that you in China receives 4,000 tons of electronic waste an hour. 4,000 tons an hour. I mean, it looks like a little city from a very dystopian future with all of this going on. But you see what's starting to happen here is this is becoming the new gold mine. Because there's so much electronics out there with gold and silver in it, we're starting to realize it's cheaper to smelt electronics than it is actually to mine gold. And if you think about it even further, 1 ton of cell phones equals 70 tons of gold ore. And so we're starting to see that it's much cheaper just to take that old cell phone, take the gold out, and reuse it. So soon enough, we're going to be using just the electronics we have in our system to keep that gold moving in the machine. So if you think your industry, whatever industry you're in, is immune to disruption, you're incredibly wrong. And all of us get stuck in this concept that we need to be innovating. And just to make sure we understand the difference, innovation means you're always doing something you've always done just a bit more efficiently, just a little bit better. Disruption means that you're taking your existing business model and you're making it obsolete. That's a key difference in the way we go approaching this. I mean, think about what major organizations do is they're really great at innovating. Look what Gillette did. 1 blade, 2 blade, 3 blade, 4 blade, 5 blade. Did anybody need that 6th blade? No, but they didn't know what else to do, so they just kept innovating. Just make it a little bit better, a little bit better. But I mean, who needs 6 blades? Here comes a company with 1 blade and disrupts their whole business. The Dollar Shave Club has a brand new business model that disrupts them. It's not only with the blade, it's the way you go about selling the product. It's what really is determining the way we get prepared for the future. And ultimately, we must realize that innovation is not enough for the future. We need disruption. We need flow. The light bulb wasn't invented by making the candle more efficient. And I couldn't help myself but to put this quote in, just for you, Sohail. It takes unreasonable thinking in order for us to prepare for the future. What we did in the past becomes, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, irrelevant. That's the future we're moving into. The future we're moving into is unreasonable. It doesn't make sense that it takes us 10 years to become a doctor, and then Watson gets to be a better doctor than we are. Do you know that Watson, IBM's medical artificial intelligence machine, has an 80% accuracy hit rate for determining lung cancer? Do you know what it takes for a human doctor to get accuracy? 50%. So it takes us 10 years to make a terrible doctor. This is unreasonable. We can't keep doing what we've always done to prepare for this future. And Einstein said it best. He said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. And in order for us to prepare for this future, in order for us to have foresight, flow becomes incredibly essential. The wisdom that's required, the curiosity that's required in order for us to prepare becomes paramount. In the age of exponential disruption, the most dangerous thing you can do is what you did yesterday. And then it becomes your choice, whether tomorrow is one day or day one. Your incredible privilege of choice, how you want to prepare. Thank you for your attention.
I have a couple of questions for you, John. Please have a seat. Sure. Why don't you take that one there? You have your mics?
I do, yes.
So there's probably like 10 questions I could ask, or 20 or 100, right? Sure. I want to ask you one question, and then I want to open it up to the audience if they have any questions. And I want to encourage some of the younger members of the audience to ask us some questions. Did that artificial intelligence car ask you to ride it? Did I understand that correctly?
No.
Give me an extra $10, I'll go faster.
No. So what the car was trying to do was trying to build more funds to pay other cars to get out the way so that I could get to the airport quicker. So what's happened is that certain cars have the sensors inside them. So let's say Tesla has the potentiality for it to happen. The Google cars have it now. Do you know, just a quick fact on the side, do you know who has the second highest number of autonomous licenses in America? Apple. So Apple's now on it as well. So if your car has the sensors and the intelligence in it, it can talk to other cars with the same intelligence and sensors in it, communicate for it to move out the way so you can get share the revenue. And share the revenue, absolutely. Yeah.
Another question. The minister was talking about having the balance between being reasonable and unreasonable, right? You still need that core skill set. You still need your operations and whatever, especially in industries with high risk. You know, if you're in the petrochemical industry, you can't have an engineer in the back operations room deciding to be unreasonable, pressing the wrong button or doing something. How do we balance between past thinking and future thinking? How do you balance between being reasonable and unreasonable?
Great question. Great question. Because I work with organizations around the world, everybody has the same challenges. It's how do we keep the lights on and think disruptively? And it's really difficult. You can't actually do it within one organization because if you think about it, disruption requires us to think 5 years ahead. Keeping the lights on requires us to think about tomorrow. So what I've always suggested to organizations is to build 3 teams. 3 businesses. I call them the today team, The Today team is about innovation, modification, efficiency, the 1 to 2 year horizons, and they are given bonuses according to that sort of thinking.
Right.
Then you have the Tomorrow team, the 2 to 5 year horizon. They are the people with blockchain, artificial intelligence, the new thinkers that are able to now to determine the future that we're going into. And those are the unreasonable thinkers because they need to be creating business solutions for an unreasonable world. Then you have the day after team, who are the Imagineers, the futurists, and the creative thinkers that are creating solutions or horizons around the 10-year mark, and to see how we can plant seeds. But here's the trick, is that if we are not planting seeds for the next 2 to 5 years in our organizations now, disruption is going to hit us.
So how, two questions, follow-up questions. These three teams, one
Yes.
is, do they speak to each other or not? Or should you put one in an innovation lab locked away somewhere with minimal interaction to the others? The second is, how do you allocate budget between those three teams?
Yeah, so McKinsey's has got a great process. They say 70% to keep the lights on, 20% for the 2 to 5 year plan, and 10% for the 10 year. They call it the moonshot team right here. I would suggest that they are totally separate because if you really think about it, they are totally different business models that are required. Just look at the Gillette and the Dollar Shave Club. If you had to take the Dollar Shave Club into the Gillette model, it would die.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow it to breathe. The person who started this, without even realizing it, I think was Steve Jobs. You know, he took a bunch of engineers into an office park that was totally away from Apple, put a pirate flag.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Above that office, and he got them to not interact with them and create something totally unique.
That's right.
So today teams, tomorrow teams, and day after teams.
Fantastic. Good. Do we have any questions from John? For John, rather?
Yes.
Put your hand up high, and can we have someone with a mic? We'll start with Khalid Turk over there.
Are there
Can
mics?
we have, yeah, I hope there are mics, otherwise we're going to have to do a lot of shouting. There doesn't seem to be anyone with a mic at the moment. We'll see if we find someone afterwards. Khalid, stand up, Habibi, and just shout. We'll try and hear you.
Thank you. Nice to see you again, actually. Hi. Yes. Great question. Thank you. I want us to
repeat the question for us.
Okay, the question was, how dangerous is artificial intelligence in determining the choices we make moving into the future? Am I right? Is that the right question?
Will we become slaves to artificial intelligence?
Yes, we become slaves to it. Yes, exactly. I want to give you some objectivity on that. Why do you think Rolex is such a great brand? What happened? Why do you think that Louis Vuitton is Louis Vuitton? Why do you think BMW is BMW? The objectivity I'm giving you is that we are already brainwashed. We're already brainwashed. If you watch CNN or Fox or Al Jazeera, the brainwashing has happened with us for many, many generations. I think the potentiality of it becoming evil or positive is absolutely there. And I don't want to take the focus off the fact that it could become negative. But I think on earth what we have is the duality of humankind. We have the kindness and we have the evilness. It's just like the surgeon's knife can either heal you or kill you. And so I feel that with artificial intelligence, I think on its own, it's quite neutral. I think how it gets utilized by human beings will shift it. So is there a danger? Yes. Do I want to focus on it? No. And the reason I don't want to focus on it, because I think the upswing for what it's going to do with humanity requires as much energy into it as possible, rather than being fearful of it. And remember, I'm not saying ignore it, but what I'm saying is that the reptilian mind will immediately get you to look for fear first, rather than opportunity. And so what I urge you to do is to spend 60% of the time looking at the positives and 40 on the negative, and eventually make it 70, 30, 80, 20, so we can put all our energy and focus into the things that can uprise. But obviously there is a negative opportunity, and there was with the internet as well. With everything around us, there's an opportunity for negativity as well. So I don't think we are clear of it, but I personally would rather focus on the things that it can do well for humanity.
Thank you. We have a question over here, and again, I don't know if we have mics yet. Otherwise, we're going to ask for some do we have a young man with a mic, so you can save your hanjra.
I just wanted to hear your views on our educational system. Educational system, we are all graduates of schools and universities that encourage reasonable thinking, systems thinking,
Yes.
logical thinking, and then we expect to
Yes.
become very unreasonable. So
Yes,
what are your views?
great question. I get that question a lot. And first, before I start answering the question, is you're asking the question for your children, right? Yes. My answer to that is, your actions are so loud I can't hear a word you're saying. Is your kids are watching you. And if you want them to be unreasonable, you have to adopt some unreasonable thinking as well, so your children can morph to become versions of you. But that's just step one. We are in a state of transition, in an incredible state of transition, where all logical thinking will be replaced by artificial intelligence over the next 5 to 10 years. It's happening at a lightning pace. And what we're starting to see where education is going is becoming hyper-personalized on creating the development of the right brain rather than the left brain. And all education to date has been left brain focused. It's learning languages, processes, numbers, and those sort of things. And this part of our brain will soon start quietening down, and this part of our brain will start awakening. So I don't have an answer for what the future of education is, because I don't think anybody can determine what the future is going to be holding exactly. But what I can say is that next time you're with your family and having dinner, talk about the future. Talk about something that's exciting. Watch a 5-minute video. Change the language around what the future looks like and feels like, and go to innovation summits with your kids so that that becomes part and parcel of the family's habits, behaviors, and rituals.
So I'm very proud to announce that my wife and 2 kids are here to learn about innovation. So
there we go, exactly.
yeah, we're applying your method. And there's a statistic out there, and I forget the exact number, something like 30 or 2/3 of jobs will not exist by 2030, something like that. So one of the things we have to do is teach our kids to be adaptable. I think this is really important. And I think there isn't, beyond that, there's not much you can do.
It really isn't.
Teach them to be adaptable. Do we have any other questions?
Can I just say one thing? At the turn of the 19th century, 88% of the human population were farming. How many percent of the human population farm now? 1.8%. So it's not about losing jobs, replacing jobs, I think is much more of a apt way of describing it.
And one of the other things to remember is that disruption has been happening for a long time.
Yes.
So it's fascinating for you to say that it's only 1.8 people are farming,
Yeah.
yet now feeding almost
Yes,
7
exactly.
billion people, a lot more people than we have on the planet,
Exactly.
which is interesting. We have a question over here.
Yeah, it's rather a comment than a question. Thank you very much for the massive information. It was long but very interesting and not easy to follow. Nevertheless, I'm...
Did you say my presentation was too long?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Nevertheless, I found it very interesting that you highlighted the e-waste issue, and actually it's not only the e-waste issue, the waste issue in general, I consider as a new currency in the future, because every human everywhere in the world, every culture is producing the so-called waste, but nevertheless it's valuable material, and as you showed very clearly, and by the way, Japan is doing it, they recycle 22 items, they have a whole industry, they don't import anything related to electronics, so they reuse everything in a consistent circle. So this was very important to highlight that it's not e-waste, it's actually e-valuable material, and in general.
Thank you so much for
very
that.
Thank you.
And Japan as well has all their Olympic medals are from recycled, that's right.
They recycle it from e-waste, actually.
Thank you so much. That was a long statement from you. Anyway, just kidding. It was,
Sorry, next time I'll cut it short.
great information, great information.
And it just so happens we have a biotech entrepreneur from Japan who will be speaking later. So we look forward to having Mr. Sakiyama-san speak. From this side, do we have any questions? Can you raise your hand again, please? Was there someone?
But you did have a question, no more? Oh, was
Okay. Okay, yeah.
All right, good morning. You talked extensively about that hyper-personalization. So how do we protect individual privacy and human rights, especially with young children and young people who are using the internet? And how do we prevent a government from potentially taking advantage of that and using it to manipulate its citizens?
Sorry, I didn't hear the second part of that question.
Okay, so that is a lot louder. So the second part, first off about protecting the individual privacy of children and young people using the internet with hyper-personalization. And the second part is how do we prevent a government from using that to take advantage of its citizens?
Yeah, wow. Okay, so
Social studies teacher,
so first up, I want to just say that privacy is dead. I don't think privacy is what it used to be. If you think about the family structures we used to have in even the 80s, nobody knew what was going on in the families next to you. The homes were so private, and today with social media and the rest of it, the transparency has become quite normal. In fact, people want other people watching them live. It's become a new way of living. So I don't think privacy is what it used to be. But I think the best way to stop yourself from falling into the wrong hands is to get off Google and Facebook. Because that's where it's being measured. And I think a lot of people are angry with the fact that Google and Facebook are doing this and that with their data. But then if you don't like it, don't be on those platforms. I mean, that's the best way. And then the second thing is, how do you stop governments from using it in a bad way? Have you seen what China is doing now with their, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So my answer to your question is, I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea what governments are going to do with it, how they're going to go about doing it. Again, I think the danger is always there. I just want to focus on an 8-year-old girl in Malawi and how she's going to change her life based on access to information that she's never had access to, and what that's going to do to her life, a village's life, a town's life, and a country's life. So again, I don't want to dismiss your question. I think it's a valid, but I'm not a cybersecurity specialist. I'm an optimist and a futurist, and my focus is always around how do we uplift. But all of those dangers are there. I think a cybersecurity specialist will be able to answer you better. And are you from America? Yeah. Originally, okay, yeah. So I mean, your government's big time into this stuff as well, I guess, as you know. Yeah, okay.
We'll have one last question. Do we have any final questions? In fact, we don't. What we'd like to do, John, is give you a small token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Can we have our little token for John here? Please. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very informative. Very entertaining as well.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, a small little token of appreciation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
So, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. We're going to have a break now. May I ask everybody to be back in here at 11:54 a.m. If you're not sure, check someone's smartphone. 11:54 a.m. We'd like you to be back in here. Thank you very much. Gracias. Mashkourin.
This one. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one, okay. Another one here. Yeah, this okay. This okay. This one for that. Okay. And this one for you. Two, three, four. بس هو
Check 1, 6. Check 1, 6. Check 1, 6. check, check. check one, sit. Take one.
Can I have everybody's attention, please? Sometimes when you do an unreasonable thinking summit, people hold it against you and they put it back in your face by being unreasonable and then coming late and then saying, well, I'm being unreasonable and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very aware of the irony that is going on here. But when it comes to being an organizer, we try to be as reasonable as possible. We see Huda and Sattam having a conversation there. We'd like them to leave him alone. Tara, Huda, tara, تسوي مشاكل ترى. She's not even listening to me. Okay, we have a really, really special guest for us today, our next speaker. He's an author, politician, and former international civil servant. Dr. Shashi Tharoor wears many hats. Currently a second-term Lok Sabha MP representing the Tiruvananthapuram constituency in Kerala. I know I butchered that, I'm sorry. And chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on External Affairs. He has previously served as Minister of State for Human Resource Development and Minister of State for External Affairs in the Government of India. Prior to that, during his 3-decade-long career at the United Nations, he served as a peacekeeper, refugee worker, and administrator at the highest levels, serving as Under-Secretary General during Mr. Kofi Annan's leadership of the organization. Dr. Tharoor is also an award-winning author of works, both fiction and non-fiction, and has a large number of bestsellers to his credit. We are very, very honored. Please welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor from India. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, and it's good to see you all here. I didn't realize there were so many unreasonable people in Bahrain, but I'm glad you got off to a good start this morning, and I'm delighted to be sharing with you my thoughts on innovation, disruption, out-of-the-box thinking, all of those wonderful things, while offering some perspectives on the subject from an Indian policymaker's point of view. There is obviously a lot of interest globally in understanding and exploring the potential of innovation. That's no surprise to any of us, or we wouldn't be here. It demonstrates every society's growing faith in our potential to solve traditional age-old problems that we need to continue to struggle with. And to speak to you on this subject on Bahraini soil is an added delight. One looks at. Boasting a great civilizational history, this land of the Dilmun civilization, which was in trade contact with India 5,000 years ago, which historically held power over great trading routes, now you hold together the network of global innovation and transformation. And once again, Bahrain has brought people together, brought us all together, both decision makers, global industrial leaders, members of the Bahraini business community, young entrepreneurs, change makers, and even a wandering Indian MP, and bestowed upon us the great opportunity of discussing a concept which is intrinsically linked to our growth and success as a global community. Today also marks, I understand, the commencement of the second edition of the Startup Bahrain Week, a truly remarkable celebration and recognition of the disruptive potential of innovation, organized under the patronage of His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the Crown Prince and Chairman of the Bahrain Economic Development Board. I'm told that this edition is likely to witness the participation of 2,500 entrepreneurs from across the world. And I'm confident that our deliberations on innovation and disruption will suitably complement and enhance these larger conversations that will take place as part of the Startup Bahrain Week. Now, somebody who has to dabble in policy issues and is captivated by the subject of innovation, to my mind it's clear that with its capacity of overcoming and efficiently challenging our problems through critical out-of-the-box thinking, innovation is poised firmly to become the most significant driver of change in the 21st century. This is particularly true in India, where I believe that innovation holds the potential to transform the social trajectory of 1.3 billion people. India's example as an increasingly diverse, as an increasingly open to innovation, therefore innovation-driven economy, that looks both towards innovation and entrepreneurship as the path to the future, where answers are being found through fresh ideas and fresh thinking, is one for the world to take note of. The evolving technological space in the era of big data sets, blockchain and artificial intelligence, a burgeoning demand for new products and services within the domestic market, have been driven by factors such as the availability of both domestic and international funding and consolidation activities by a number of firms. Startups have permeated our landscape, where Indians have disrupted mainstream ways of thinking and doing business and embraced innovation with enthusiasm and spirit, trying to find new ways to answer old questions. Now, when you study the etymology of innovation, you find its interestingly turbulent history. In fact, innovation was actually a derogatory term, not a complimentary one in the English language, right up to its redemption by the influential 20th century economist Joseph Schumpeter, who saw it as the greater end product of any successful invention and as the precursor to development, locating entrepreneurship as the pathway between the two. Now, the phraseology of disruption, which also used to be a pejorative term, is following the same roadmap. But these two key terms, innovation and disruption, have a long and embedded history in the development of India. Ours is the land of Ayurveda and yoga, the country that invented the zero, making the decimal system possible, the land of the first recorded rhinoplasty operation 2,000 years ago, and for us the tradition of innovation is not a new one. But one could argue that the contemporary interest in innovation in the Indian context stems from the remarkable and proven record of Indians in globally recognized innovation hubs like Silicon Valley, which towards the end of the 20th century saw the proliferation of a number of startups held by Indians. There's an interesting statistic I checked recently. 13.4% of all startups that originated in Silicon Valley in the 1980s, 90s, and the first decade of the 2000s were founded by Indians, many of which have gone on to become household names across the world. And it said that 40% of all Silicon Valley companies are Indians, either amongst the founders or in the leadership on the board. Together with our historic aptitude for adaptability and entrepreneurial strengths, naturally this has made itself to India. Today, the Indian city of Bangalore, or Bengaluru as it's rebaptized itself, is recognized as the Silicon Valley of India, that geographically should be called the Silicon Plateau. There's also a place near Mumbai called the Powai Valley, jokingly, for the increasing number of startups located there. And from Oyo to Ola, Indian startups are taking on strong competition from the global in the global arena. Many of these have now joined the prestigious ranks of global unicorns, the nomenclature for privately held startups valued at over $1 billion, coined so by Eileen Lee because of their rarity, or rather the mythicism of their possibility. But India, in many ways, India's unicorns seem likely to proliferate rather than become extinct. In fact, we've invented our own club for small businesses and young but ambitious ventures we call nano-unicorns. A pilot project launched by the Indian state of Odisha promotes skill development and business capacities for individuals who display distinct entrepreneurial traits, maybe the owner of a manufacturing unit or even a roadside Indian street food vendor. At the same time, we boosted the whole business of startups. We can boast of a 50% increase in startups concerned with advanced technology, especially the Internet of Things and data analytics, setting the pace globally in tandem with the amplification of entrepreneurial diversity in India. The manner in which there is now a proliferation of startups within the country, a country that has emerged as the world's third largest startup ecosystem, not less than 11,000 by next year, from a reported 4,700 just 3 years ago. This tells a much larger story. Today, the options available to us in India are countless. Now in 2019, technology have now established a Center for Artificial Intelligence, even launching certificate programs in artificial intelligence and machine learning as of this month. At its very foundation, our Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru called IITs India's future in the making, and I must say that a new future is being remade for our youngsters in this situation. India's economy, of course, has transformed itself dramatically since our big liberalization of 1991, when our then Finance Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who later became well known as Prime Minister, told the Indian Parliament, paraphrasing Victor Hugo, that no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. The fact is that idea, the liberalization of the Indian economy, not only gave us growth and diversity, which allowed us to weather the storms that confronted the global economy after the crisis of 2008 onwards, but which also enabled us to overtake Japan to become the third largest economy in the world in purchasing power parity, PPP, terms. Indeed, given the core fundamental strength of the Indian economy, thanks in great measure to the reforms put forward by Dr. Manmohan Singh, it's a little wonder that the International Monetary Fund has maintained its prediction that the Indian economy will be the fastest growing major economy in the world, well ahead of China. But in many ways, the best is yet to come, or ought to be, for India, because we have a plethora of dynamic entrepreneurs, and age is on our side. We are the youngest major economy in the world, at a time when most of our rivals, if you like, or competitors, including in Asia, are aging and facing a serious demographic squeeze. Other places too. In Europe, the average age by next year, 2020, will be 46. In Japan, it'll be 47. Even in America, it's going to be 40. But the average age in India will be 29. So you've got this huge population, little over 50% under 25, approximately 65% under 35, a young country where fresh graduates will be joining a dynamic, competitive, productive, youthful workforce, which could be the engine of the world, primed to take over from China, provided we get a few things right. In fact, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, predicted that by 2020 we'll have in India 116 million workers in the job starting age group of 20 to 24, whereas China will only have 94 million. So we would have the labour force that could change the world at a time when, for example, the industrialized world's labour force is shrinking by 4% this coming year, China's is going down by 5%, and India's is going to increase by 32%. So as far as the age structure and potential is concerned, this is a huge competitive advantage. But it depends on our ability to innovate. It depends on our ability to train, educate, and skill this youthful workforce to take advantage of the opportunities that the world has to offer. And when one looks at international connectivity, the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC countries, are host to some of the largest numbers of our migrant workers who contribute greatly to the economic vitality of these nations. I think we have 350,000 Indians in Bahrain's entire population of 1.2 million. That is well more than 30%. The vital aspect of all of this is of course, the people themselves, the movements they make, but ease of mobility, workforce advantage, demographic dividend, all of these are things that can work in our favor with those countries that want our labor to move to them. But elsewhere, and certainly at home, we need to educate and train our people better than we're doing and equip them with the possibilities that innovation makes possible. The Indian demographic dividend could otherwise become a demographic disaster. If we continue to produce legions of undereducated or even uneducated, unemployed and therefore unemployable, and therefore very frustrated young people. In India, sadly, we've had Maoist violent incidents in 106 districts in 10 of our states. And these are young people who, because they can't find any jobs and aren't equipped to find any jobs or be employed, feel they have no stake in our society, because they haven't even been equipped with the basic necessities to be a part of it. And that is where national security becomes a victim of dangerous ideologues. After all, if you are feeling hopeless, you have no real stake in the future of your country, and some misguided ideologue shows up with 1,000 rupees, which is about $15, and a Kalashnikov, you don't see why that's such a bad idea. It represents an alternative lifestyle, and you don't have to think very hard, do you? Terrorism and extremism are global challenges, birthed by core issues like the mismatch between education systems and the requirements of the modern-day workplace. And as an international community, we have the responsibility of pulverizing common problems, keeping in mind international goals. Job security, income stability, long-term employment, social protection are indispensable to human development. And we need to find creative solutions to triumph over these challenges together. The recuperation of Iraq after the defeat of ISIS sets a positive precedent. Co-working spaces and incubators are hubs for ideas, and entrepreneurs are able to function in a recovering socio-political situation in what has otherwise been a saturated economic system. Iraq's youngsters, brainstorming in ordinary buildings, have found solutions to matters, leaving high-level political officials at loggerheads. Solutions to radical extremism, corruption, social inequalities, challenges of collapse in the banking sector, and so on. Now, this is where the spotlight falls on all of us. The onus of harnessing our nation's potential, bringing about the social and economic transformation that we have envisioned, requires leadership across all sectors of our economies. The greatest weapons in our national arsenals are the burgeoning entrepreneurial ambitions, which more and more we see on the front lines, especially in nations like India with their dramatic demographic potential. A distinctive brand India has already evolved, partly because of business, partly because of soft power skills, but even more due to the proliferation of micro, small and medium level entrepreneurial ventures profiting from innovations in recent years. Sure, some will succeed, some will fail, but they will all energize our economic space and throw up the best available minds and talents to lead our economy and eventually the country. We need to cultivate an ecosystem of innovation, as the right mindset is often half the battle won in finding the right solution. I say with confidence that this evening's, this day's conference, today and tomorrow actually, 2 days conference, will contribute immensely to our potential, because there is no doubt that these issues that you are confronting today are key to finding the right answers in the 21st century. Now, in 70 years of India's independence as a nation, we found creative solutions to lots of problems. I have to say that we have come a long way. Since 1947, when the British left us in very bad shape. Some of you may be aware of my book, An Era of Darkness, published in the Western world as Inglorious Empire, what the British did to India. But very quickly, the British left us with a negligible 0.01% annual growth for the preceding half a century. They actually left us with a life expectancy of just 27 and 90% of our population living below the poverty line. And this was the country which they had found as the richest country in the world, accounting then for 27% of global GDP in 1700. So I must say the British did a pretty successful job of transforming the richest country of the world into a poster child for third world poverty. But we've been recovering over the last 70 years, and the challenges, unique and collective, that we face in this century and beyond are such that with innovation and with entrepreneurship we should be able to overcome them. Interestingly, some of India's innovations have lain in the realm of technique and the ways of doing things. It was amusing to discover that American business schools, starting with Harvard Business School, are studying the Dabbawalas of Mumbai as a case study. The Dabbawalas of Mumbai are literally fellows who on simply a hand-drawn cart will transport thousands and thousands of tiffin carriers bearing the lunches of harassed lower middle class clerks and office workers from their homes in different parts of the city, and they have arrived accurately at their destination a staggering 99.9% of the time with complete accuracy. And that's something that the HBS has been studying for some years, wondering how on earth they've been able to manage this kind of efficient resources, how they've innovated a technique of food delivery that no algorithm had been able to perfect before that. The Indian Railways innovations, not just the computerization of reservations for the largest single railway system in the world, about other kinds of innovations in using disposable clay pots for selling tea on railway station platforms, to innovation techniques for financial management, are all being studied now in various institutions of higher education in the Western world, which means that indigenous business practices have worked well. Indeed, there's an entire book about the notorious Indian business practice of jugaad. Jugaad is Hindi for a sort of inexpensive innovation to solve problems. And there's, as I said, an entire book about it. There are critics, of course, who say that, jugaad is just a method that people use as a way to twist their way around the system to get things done or to cut corners. And that it's not good enough for India because it's about simply making do. We should be striving for excellence, they say. But the truth is that the instinct for jugaad is a bit more than that. It's about new ways of thinking out of the box, of facing a challenge, knowing you can't afford the official solution, so repurposing existing things you've got to make do with what you've got within your resource constraints, and thereby find solutions, think creatively, and bring non-traditional innovative solutions to traditional issues. I'll give you a couple of examples. An Indian villager constructs a makeshift vehicle out of a bullock cart to transport his livestock and goods by rigging the wooden part of the bullock cart with an irrigation